Okay, welcome. Well, Gio and David are snuggling close together in a meeting room somewhere, sharing a camera. If you're watching us online, welcome. It's so good to see you. So David Arraya is the managing director at the Delosier Group, and we'll let him tell us about his background and what that means. If you were at the GWA Flex Forward conference in September, he was one of our keynote speakers, so you got to hear him speak. So I'm excited to have you on. Okay, where are you guys today? Are you in a co-working space? What's going on?
We're in Caddo Reimagined
Oh,
in
very
Lakewood. So
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
they were kind enough to host us. We were across the street having lunch. So,
And you ran
but
in and said, wait, they don't usually allow external meeting bookings. Is that
well,
right?
we're kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gio
you're
knows people,
totally a big
clearly.
deal. Totally. That's a good looking meeting room.
But I'm
Good
super excited to
acoustics
have
too.
yeah, I'm super excited to have David on. So he was obviously a speaker at GWA, like you said, but he and I have really connected on just our passion for people and driving change and impact and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's exciting to have him on and kind of continue to follow up on the hospitality side and how important it is to build community and make an impact and a change in the world. And he's got some really, really cool stuff going on in which he's taken his hospitality background. But for those of us that didn't join us for the talk, Dave, why don't you talk a little bit about your background, how you got in the hospitality business, and kind of just go from there?
Certainly. It's great to be here with both of you. And Gio, thanks for the friendship. You know, that's the beauty of life is you get connected through one event or another, and then that leads to a beautiful friendship. I know will be lifelong. And like you mentioned, we've got so many different
Lifelong friends
parallels.
already.
Yeah, it's
Love
amazing,
it.
you know, and it's been great. It's been great to continue connected after the conference and to get some advice on some of the moves that I was making. And he's been really amazing at giving me the right advice. So I'm grateful for that. So I started my career in hospitality right after I left Bolivia. So I'm from Bolivia originally, born and raised, and then I left and went and did a cultural exchange program in the south of France where I landed in a resort and I immediately was hooked on both service, but also on just taking care of people. I learned the language fairly quickly, and that helped me progress from being a bartender to then moving into all sorts of different roles within the resort environment. I did a little bit of
Wait, hold
maintenance
on.
and
You did a cultural exchange to the south of France where you were a bartender.
yeah, well, so let me,
That's good
yeah.
marketing.
So there, yeah, it's a good storytelling, right? As you can see. No,
Yes.
so this exchange program, essentially, somebody came and lived in my home for a year, and then in exchange, I went and
Oh,
and, and lived in France.
okay, that
So
is
my parents
interesting.
did
Wow.
sacrificed, I guess,
Huh.
the time and energy for so that I can go and experience something different. And I had to, when I was filling out the application form, I needed to fill out kind of what my criteria or priorities were, what I wanted to accomplish. And for me, it was very simple. It was I wanted to be by the ocean because I'm from a landlocked country. I wanted to speak a new language, and I wanted to be around people. I just wanted to be that. Those were the three things that I wanted. And I ended up in a resort. And so, yeah, first role was a bartender because, again, I needed to pick up the language. It was quite simple, I would say, from a role perspective. And then after 3 months, I was, in housekeeping and then doing the restaurants. And then I started doing more leadership type roles. And I started really falling in love with the team aspect and how, you take care of people, then they feel great and then they come back to see you again, and that was kind of the addictive piece of hospitality that hooked me. And so I knew I wanted to study hospitality. And so when I returned to Bolivia and then went to college in South Carolina, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so how I landed in South Carolina, I had a soccer opportunity to get a soccer scholarship. So that's how a Bolivian ends up in South Carolina. So yeah, so I went to school at Winthrop University. I studied hospitality and international business. I worked every summer and throughout all the semesters I was, doing jobs in hospitality, restaurants, bars, country clubs. And then I finally became the hotel manager of the university hotel, which allowed me then when I left college to actually take my first role out of college as a leadership position. And that was in New York City at the Pierre. And I'm going to go quite quickly because it's a long story, but from the Pier in New York City, I then moved to Miami and worked at Fontainebleau, Miami Beach. So very different
Yeah.
to the style of New York. From Miami Beach, I moved to Hong Kong. So I worked for a company called Swire, that is a big real estate company based out of Hong Kong, but has mixed use developments all over the world. And I was sent there to be basically the brand ambassador for their first project in the US, but to go and learn about the company and the brand. They call it a brand dunk. So I did that for 2 years, then came back to Miami and opened their first hotel there. Then I joined Four Seasons in Hawaii. So I went to the other side of the world and I
That
spent two
sounds
years
like
in
it
Hawaii.
sucks.
Wow, it was amazing. Yeah, I lived on an island with 3,000 people on it, and we employed 800 of them, and the other third were too old and the other third were too young. So we basically employed everybody that could be employed on the island. Amazing experience, super mindful. That was the beginning of kind of my mindfulness and spiritual journey, and we'll talk about that a little bit later because it had a big impact. But then I went from there to Austin, Texas. So very different, also with Four Seasons. And then from Austin, I moved to Aspen, Colorado, where I spent a season and a half with a company called Auberge. I have some beautiful properties. And then from there, I went to Mexico to the Riviera Maya. I opened a resort in the Riviera Maya. And then I moved to Ibiza, so where I am now. So yeah, so I've been all over the world, and not only me, but my family. So I have
Oh,
my
you do have a
wonderful wife,
family. I
Jessica.
was going to say, sounds
Yeah.
like the challenge of this lifestyle is that you move all the time.
Yeah.
He found himself a Southern belle.
I did find myself a Southern belle that was as crazy as I was and
And
ready to
willing
take
to
on the
move around
world.
with
And
you. Okay.
yeah,
Good for you.
yeah. So yeah. And so we both caught the travel bug and the wanderlust very, very early on. And our kids are just like that as well. So my son Andres is 12. He's lived
Wow.
in 4 different countries and in 8 different locations. He's been to 5 different schools, and so he's very much in that lifestyle now. So, but we've called Ibiza home for the last 2 years now, and most recently I joined my great friend Patrick Delosier at the Delosier Group as the managing director for their hospitality division. I left a role as COO for a Mexican company called Nomade People in December, and after almost 20 years of working for different companies, I finally decided to go out on my own and go the entrepreneurial route and with both executive search and consulting in hospitality, but now also I'm very excited about venturing into impact investing and using hospitality as a communication channel to really bring a bigger amount of impact into the world. So really excited about what the future brings.
Wow.
Where do we
Jamie's
start?
all excited. She's like, well, I don't even.
I know.
So many questions.
Okay, I do have to say the first thing that distracted me is when you were talking about your host exchange and
Yeah.
soccer. So I run our local youth soccer program, and we have two
Yeah.
coaches from the UK here, and those poor guys are in hotels. And I am like, I have too much on my to-do list. I need to find them host families so that they can get out of the hotels and into their
Totally.
cultural exchange. So
Yes, absolutely.
it's
I
so
think it would be,
important.
it makes a great difference because, you really do become much more assimilated into the local culture, and so from a language perspective, but also just from the interactions that they'll have with the community, I think they'll be so much more integrated.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, okay, wait, how did you and Geo connect? How did you come to speak at the
Through the
GWA?
conference. Yeah, so
Wait, but
I
who knew you to have you speak?
Sid.
Yeah, through Sid.
Oh, how do
Yeah.
you
So
know
Sid had
Sid?
heard of him somewhere else and brought him up. And then
Okay.
first time we met was the day
conference.
before the
Yeah,
conference.
yeah.
We went to dinner.
And yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so well, tell me, I'm curious. Yeah, I do have so many questions, but I'm curious about your lens of like hospitality and workspaces.
Yeah. So for me, what I realized over all these experiences that I've had, because every single one of these experiences was completely different, right? So managing a 5-star hotel in Hong Kong is very different to managing a 5-star hotel or a lifestyle hotel in Miami, which is very different to running a beautiful resort in Hawaii, right? Very different types of hospitality. But what I realized was that hospitality is a universal language. I see it as a love language, right? So just like people love words of affirmation.
Definitely one of my love languages.
Yeah,
I buy
yeah,
that.
and many,
Yeah.
and many people love receiving hospitality, and many people are just incredibly passionate about offering hospitality too, right? And it's as simple as you walk into a building and you run into someone, you open the door for them because it's natural, it's in you, and it's yes, somebody has taught you that perhaps when you were young, but that's because hospitality can be taught, but then there's just people that just naturally have that, right? Or somebody looks at you and they're like, wow, you have such a beautiful smile. Nobody's paying you to do that, right? It's something that's ingrained in you, and it just comes out. And so hospitality is really that, right? Is being able to be present, is being able to see the people that are in front of you, is being able to really acknowledge the things that you appreciate about people, acts of service, right? Which is a big part of hospitality because it's tied to service. So if you tell me what hospitality has to do with any industry, but perhaps specifically industries where you're talking about human connection and service, to me, it's really the communication channel. It's a communication vehicle that allows you to be able to provide what these people are looking for, right? Which is you want to go somewhere where you feel seen, where you feel heard, where the things that are important to you are actually considered, and that's what hospitality is. And so I'm actually really happy that now companies are using this term hospitality to integrate an additional level of experience for their clients. And so you see head of hospitality is like the new cool job to have, and you see it across so many different industries. And for me, it's because we're recognizing that today's day and age is causing human connection to break and to separate and to distance rather than to come together, which is what we need to be doing. And that's why I love that hospitality can be that glue.
Yeah, and I mean, the great example for it is, like I've talked about, I can tell you within the first 30 seconds of walking in a space whether I think it's successful or not. And 9 out of 10 times I'm accurate, right?
Yeah.
What's the space look like? How am I welcomed? Am I welcomed?
Yeah.
Right. And so I'll give you a great example. I was in Detroit yesterday for the day. So literally I was on the ground for 8 hours to look at space, some expansion space for therapy space, which Marcus was a former host or guest, sorry, on here. But I walked into two office evolutions, and the first one I walked into, I was greeted by the owner of the space, right? So she was working up front. Her husband came around and, introduced myself. And 30 seconds later, her husband came around the corner he was doing a tour with a potential client. And so very quickly, obviously, they're owner operators. So you get that feel, he knew who I was. He watched the podcast before and had heard me speak on other engagements. So very engaging, very interactive, but they work the business every day. The second space I walked into in Ann Arbor, so suburb of Detroit, the young lady behind the desk was super hospitable, friendly, didn't know who I was, but I basically introduced myself, and she spent the next 45 minutes with me, touring me around and talking to me about the space and the history and everything else. And so in those moments, you go, this is what it's about, right? Yeah. This is what people want. People, we live in a world where people choose to come back to our spaces, right? They choose to use us, using hospitality as hotels go. They choose to go back to that hotel. And so we get an opportunity to make such an impact in people's lives that they choose to continue to engage and enjoy the experience, right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes about more than just the value of what price is, right? It's more than a monetary exchange. It's an experiential experience and overall just a life connection, right? Correct. And I mean, we talked about mine with David and everything else as we kind of had those conversations and everything else. We connected on a different level than a professional level as Correct. Someone who paid him to come speak. It was, the passion for people and driving change, the passion for, our history and, from a family standpoint and kind of how
heritage and everything.
Yeah. And so that's the interesting part with his background is it's outside of just hospitality and hotels, but how does it translate into the workspace, which has quickly become, just like the hotel industry, right?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot more options. There's a lot
Mhm.
more product types,
Well,
all
it's
kinds of fun stuff.
consumerized, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah.
now people are paying out of their own pocket, which I don't think we're
Mm.
that close to the hotel industry, but to your point from that,
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of my biggest questions. And I'm curious what you think, and you don't have to have an answer because I don't know how much time you spend thinking about this, but people talk about hospitality. Gio, what you experienced, I sort of think of as like table stakes. Like if my community manager doesn't act, like that, gone. Like that should be what you experience as a baseline.
Yeah.
So but to get to a higher level of hospitality, may require more humans. Like it's hard, a community manager, and she's probably the only one on staff, unless yeah. So like, amazing that she spent 45 minutes with you. She's probably now behind on this like whole list of, things she had to do today. But I
Yeah.
think about that a lot because I think it's so hard to get people out of their homes today.
Yeah.
And so like what is that experience? How does the business model adjust? Like I'm going to Sun Valley for Mara's daughter's wedding tomorrow. And I'd called the hotel for I was making sure I had a room because I hadn't gotten a lot of, anyway, just making sure I was confirmed. And I said, oh, how do I get there from the airport? And they were like, oh, give me a minute and I'll text you a bunch of options. So they texted me a bunch of options, which is great. And then yesterday I was like, do I want to rent skis? Do I want to bring my own skis? And I was like, maybe I could text that number back. I wonder if they're going to respond.
Yeah.
And I just texted them back immediately. They were like, oh,
Yeah.
we have a ski rental place on site, like
Yeah.
super easy. You're all set. And I was like, this is amazing because I've got
Yeah.
way too much to do before I go
Yeah.
take 2 days off and, do this. And I was like, how does that translate to the workplace? Like I was so delighted that they helped me
Yeah.
kind of solve that. I just keep thinking, and like unreasonable hospitality, all this like, but how does it translate to a
Yeah.
workplace and a business model, which is like not super high margin. So you can't
Yeah.
just like throw people more,
Yeah.
humans. What are your, again, without the pressure of like the perfect response,
No,
what are
no,
your
no.
overall?
I think about it a lot, and I think it's, for the hotel business to have gotten to that level, I mean, I think it's unfortunate to say that, but I think that what you experienced is an anomaly in the hospitality world. I
Okay.
mean, they're getting it right.
Yeah.
And perhaps the sacrifice to getting that right is a bottom line sacrifice because they're
Yeah.
throwing a bunch of human
Okay.
beings at something and now it's just unsustainable. I'm assuming because it's not always the case.
It's not an inexpensive hotel night. So there's
Fair,
that.
oh, fair, okay.
But it's not, it's not
But I'm
Four
sure,
Seasons in Hawaii level,
yeah.
by any
What
means. But
what I mean by that is that, the margins that you would have achieved in
yeah,
in an expensive hotel 10 years ago versus
yeah,
what you would achieve today are very different, right? So the
yeah.
business model is becoming
Okay.
less and less profitable if you continue down the same path,
Of
right?
that service level and that, yeah.
Not the
Okay.
service level, but how you are going to attain that service level. So the use of technology is critical, in my opinion, right? And there's been this pushback in hospitality or in human-centered businesses to use technology because there's a fear that human connection is going to be lost, right? Oh no, we can't rely on technology because then the human connection gets lost. In my opinion, that's a fallacy because you don't even know if you were talking to a human or not,
No, it's
right?
a
So
great point, or where they were located. I mean, I don't
exactly,
know, but they immediately
exactly,
responded with an answer I wanted in like a warm, I felt great.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right? And so for me, the most important piece, and this gets translated into most businesses, is you need to separate the functions of administrative and experience, right? So you're not contacting them for an experience per
Yeah.
se. You're
Yeah.
contacting them to get something done, to a transaction. I need skis, and this is what I need. And what you want is efficiency, right? You want it that in 20 minutes you've nailed your skis, you've got it all. You don't care about the warm, fuzzy. That's
Yeah.
the little cherry on top if they get it. But if you would have gotten your skis in 20 minutes, it wouldn't have mattered if they made you feel
Yeah.
great about it or not.
Yeah.
Right. So
I don't want to feel bad about it, but I
you
don't,
won't feel, but
right.
you
I
won't,
have very low expectation, except,
well, you
yeah,
won't
they
feel
make you,
bad because the expectations that you get
yeah,
the final result. That's the
yeah.
expectation. So if you separate your administrative touch points from your experiential touch
Yeah.
points, and you actually are very intentional about the type of humans and the type of technology that you're assigning to these touch points, then you've got success. Because what happens a lot is you have this community manager that is super bubbly, extroverted, amazing with people, 45 minutes, but they are not naturally adept at technology, at managing P&Ls, at the more administrative side. That's not the type of brain that it's right. So,
Not
but the problem
usually, right?
is,
Usually you're getting
yeah,
one skill set and
and
yeah,
if you become a community manager, you come in, it's because you've demonstrated that you can do all of that, right? Because the problem that lies there is that the jobs are they're roles that you've created not around the human, but you're trying to fit the
what get
human
needs to
into the
get
job.
done. Yeah.
Yes, and so this person that was amazing at taking care of people got promoted because you didn't want to lose that person, so
Right.
you promote them into the next
Right.
job, and then you don't realize that 80% of their time they're going to continue doing the job that they were doing
Yeah.
before because
Right.
that's what they love to do
They're
and
not
that's what
gonna
makes them good at it.
do forecast your build your
And
performance
so
for
when
next
you
year.
send them
Yeah.
when the finance person says, hey, I need you to forecast, they're going to procrastinate that till the very last minute. They're going to sit there and have this imposter syndrome. They're going to sit there and be like, man, who can I ask that's not going to think I'm an absolute fool because I have no idea how to do this, right? And that's
Or I don't
I've
want
been
to.
there.
It's like super low energy work or yeah.
Exactly. It
Mhm.
drains me. It takes away from
Yeah.
me. And so if we now get into this, and I'm writing a book on this specific point, which is the future of teamwork, because that's we need to start understanding the human.
Yeah.
And then we need to start creating roles around what they're good at, what they're naturally good at, what energizes them, what gives them passion. And then because another person, the person right next door, is exactly the opposite. And so they're going to want to take on the other type of tasks, right? So you may have that one person that's incredible at getting the back of house, back end stuff done, but they don't want to go talk to a person up front, you
Yeah.
know? And so if you take them out maybe 10% of the time just to stretch them, to get them out of their comfort zone, to get them to learn something new, amazing. But if you're expecting them to do 50-50 front and back, that's when the inefficiency kicks in. That's when you don't get the results. So I hope it's a long-winded answer, but I hope it helps. For me, it's technology, putting the right people in the right place, separating experience from administration, and then you can really create that experience that you're looking for.
Let me give you a very relatable example. You
Okay.
have two podcast hosts, one that's good at scheduling people and talking, and the other one that's good at everything else, including getting a podcast on a platform. And it was funny. We had the conversation earlier. He goes, so what platform do you use? I said, Zoom. He goes, well, how does it work? I was like, you have to ask Jamie because I
Yeah,
don't know
right.
anything other
No
than
idea.
getting on Zoom and talking.
I just show up.
And we
But,
only
I mean,
use Zoom because Gio couldn't get his microphone to connect to the platform that I wanted to use.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
pretty much.
There you go.
But
Pretty
Gio,
much.
right. Gio brings the great guests. He asks the best questions.
I love it.
So
I love
yeah,
it.
But
You guys make a great team, though.
But
exactly.
that's a great example. Is I mean, I always use, the example of the Holiday Inn versus the Four Seasons, right? The Holiday Inn, you're going to walk up, there's going to be someone with a disheveled shirt texting their boyfriend, and they're going to give you a key, and that's it, right? And you walk up to the Four Seasons before you even get inside. The bellhop has asked your name. By the time you get to the front desk, they've come around, they've greeted you by name. They know what floor you want to be on. They know the temperature of your room. They know what your favorite wine is or bottle of water, whatever the case is. And so you're expecting a different level of experience at those levels, right? And as it ties into our industry, right, is there's spaces that you go to that are run by nobody.
Yes.
It's a bot, like therapy space.
Yes.
You have an iPad.
Yeah.
You walk in and you click on the counselor you're going to see, and it lets them know you're there. There's no manning or womaning the space.
But it's really well designed, and it's
absolutely
it's
you don't
got a
need
lot.
that, right? People know they're going to see this therapist, and that therapist knows their schedule. Just needs to know, hey, they're in the lobby now.
That's right.
But then you go all the way to like a shift, right? That's got an event planner. They've got a culinary concierge. They've got all kinds of stuff. Then you take it a level above that and look at a Rome, who is an event-driven business on top of co-working, and they've got 14 people running around a space because they've got, an event with Toyota with 10 executives, and they've got another room next door with 14 administrative assistants from Fujitsu who are the ones that are planning these conferences. And so it's very hospitality F&B driven. And
Yeah.
so what is your brand? What is it
Yeah.
that your brand stands for? What are
That's
you
right.
trying to deliver is the big part. And sometimes like I won't stay at an Airbnb. I just don't, right? Because I want to know if I have a problem, I can go downstairs and talk to someone about it. I can pick up the phone and have it addressed. And so I'm a Bonvoy person because of that, right?
Yeah.
Because of the point system, because it's easy to get things resolved. I avoid Airbnb, right? Using cars. I'm an Avis person. I avoid what's that one that people use, that new ride share deal that people
Oh,
use, like
Turo. Yeah.
Turo, right? Oh, how awesome. I can get a pink Maserati, but some guy's dropping it off that was, smoking weed in it the night before at the nightclub.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I have a problem with that, I'm not going to Avis who's going, oh, you're a platinum or whatever level. We need to take care of you. And so it's all preference, right? I know a lot of people
Yeah.
that prefer to stay in Airbnb.
Yeah.
And that's not me. But
Yeah.
what's your expectation?
Yeah.
I do wonder though, again, back to the I feel like we're emerging from functional is fine to, I know there will always be market segmentation, but there are so few hospitality focused brands in workspace. I think it's got to be an emerging segment. And I do really like your answer actually about, so I run a program called Community Manager University, and we actually just had a call right before this. And I am sort of trying to support the many hats that they wear. Like I teach them how to read a P&L, and we also talk about how to manage difficult, all the hats. And I'm thinking it's really hard. Maybe I should not even be supporting that approach in general. And I think in our industry, we're starting to see folks who will take that burden out of Mark Burge kind of he'll handle the operational aspects. There's a woman who runs a space called Team Savvy, and they will, do your back end so that if you have a team, they can be focused on front facing. They don't have to do the spreadsheets. They don't, all the things that are, no, I mean, you probably can never eliminate all of that from a role.
Sure.
And you have to figure out the model. And, Shift is a little bit more premium priced, and their end user is not a startup or somebody who's really early in their career. It's somebody who, appreciates a different kind of experience. I think there's a lot more to come there.
I'm curious in the kind of co-working space, flex space, the organizational charts that have been created, because it's a fairly new industry, right? So have the companies evolved the workforce, or have they kind of stuck to the very hierarchical by division, by department, the typical traditional organizational structures? Is there kind of like a norm in the industry, or everyone is a little bit different?
I mean, Gio, you'd have a perspective on this too. I think it's a really lean industry, which can be, it's kind of like what you're saying about the hotel industry. It's like, well, it used to be really profitable, and some of their revenue sources were like people needed to come to fax things or to make copies, there were functional things that you couldn't do at home, and there was a lot of margin in that, and more service because that was kind of inherent in solving that. So it's pretty lean, I think. And I think one of the challenges is people look at it exactly how you described, like, well, I need all these things done. Here's my budget. My budget is for one person, or maybe, 1.5 people. And I do think that is an argument for scale. Cato actually sort of resists this approach. They're really leanly staffed, but an argument for scale is to be able to distinguish, like, okay, this person is like back of house, this person is front of house. You cannot do that with the model where there's one person. They have to do it all, like it or not, and whether or not that's sort of optimized. So when you're running at scale, you can do more of that, but you're still talking about like one person per 8,000 feet at the space level. Then you have to have multiple locations to have any sort of like executive level team. It's challenging.
Well, let's tie it back to hotels, right? COVID changed everything for hotels, right?
Absolutely.
Because you were used to going to a hotel and you expected, I'm a weirdo, by the way. So I'm the type of person that goes straight in my room and puts up the do not disturb because I don't want anyone I don't need anyone in my room until I
Right.
leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most guests expected their room to be cleaned every day.
Yeah, sure. Twice a
Right.
day.
And then it became, when you check in, they're like, well, we'll clean your day every third day. And if you need something ahead of time, we'll go into the room. Right.
Yeah.
So hotels were able to use COVID to become even more lean
Yeah.
by using that excuse. And then, we've all had the whole little card and that's,
Those
if you
work,
don't
by
want to
the
reuse a
way. Those
towel.
work.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you don't want to use the towel, you
I'm
want to
sure
be
David knows
environmentally
more than I
friendly.
do,
Let me
right?
guilt you.
For sure. For sure.
Let me guilt you into not using the towel.
Totally right.
Yep.
But even
It
then,
is
even
that you
taking
have to use it more than once.
Yeah.
even take it. Oh, and by the way, we'll give you extra points if you don't use multiple towels.
Mhm.
But then you take it to another level in the F&B, right? They're like, we're not doing room service, and some hotels have not gone back to room service
Mhm.
because they were able to cut back on expenses and use COVID as an excuse.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of stuck, right? And so again, it's what are the experience? Why are people choosing? I mean, is that making a difference in people going back? I don't know, right? It's in a case by case basis that
Yeah.
each operator has to make the decision.
Yeah. And I think I think the point that you make, Jamie, which is key, is you need to know who you are and what type of service you're delivering, right? So as long as you're not trying to be everything for everyone, and okay, I'm select service, I'm full service, I'm very highly experiential. As long as you know and you're really honing in on what that type of experience is, then you can get much better. And going back to this idea of lean from a human perspective doesn't necessarily have to mean lean from an experience perspective, right? Because we are all used to taking care of our own business now, right? So great example, we walked in and we were trying to find out the way to connect to the Wi-Fi. And it wasn't the most easy, seamless way to connect to the Wi-Fi, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? A nice sign on the wall or a nice text message that's very timely when you're walking into the space. Now there's the technology that understands that you've walked in, and boom, you could have all the instructions on how to navigate your workspace through a text message. It's not always about humans having to deliver that, right? A technology can deliver that as well, as long as you're walking in to a space that's based on efficiency. Then that's what you're going to expect. But if you're walking into a 5-star hotel, you're going to expect somebody that can come and resolve your problem immediately when you call them, right? And so it's based on what type of identity you want to have, right? And what type of personality you want to have for the guests.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part is who your team members and what value do they bring, right? I joked around about what your expertise is and skill set as far as being organized and being able to handle all that stuff. And it's easier for me to handle the macro stuff, right? It's easy for me to find guests and get them scheduled and do all that fun stuff. But that's what makes our partnership so great, on top of we have different perspectives, right? Different backgrounds, different ways of looking at things. This will be our first personal question. So David,
I was gonna like, Gio, how are we like a half hour in and you have because you're so
well, it was so deep.
I know.
So David's been on the road 10 days. We'll tap into kind of the new stuff he's got going on, but you're a great CEO out trying to make stuff happen for your family and everything else. And you've got a COO back home, Jessica, running the house and making sure, things are going well. So what are the things about Jessica, your wife, that allow for you to do what you do that make you a better person?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by clarifying something. The CEO is undoubtedly Jessica, no doubt about it. So she's been running our home and leading our home for the last 20 years and done an amazing job with our kids. And I say that because I needed to learn my place in my life, right? And I realized that I may be the leader and the manager of the businesses that I've operated and everything, but I needed to learn that my role at home was not to be the CEO. It was to be more the COO or, maybe sometimes the CFO or whatever it is. But when I gave her that the place where she deserved is when our family actually flourished and thrived, because she's in charge of all the big decision making that happens in our home, right? And so my role is to support that. But yeah, so she's an amazing woman. First of all, she is somebody that has grown through the industry that I've been part of as well. So she's never just kind of taken a back seat. So she's been, my strongest advisor. She's been very intimately aware of every step that I've made, the decisions I've made, the people I've worked with. She's given me more advice than most people, mentors or coaches that I've had in my career. So it's been a true partnership, and for me, it's about involving the people that are around you and that you're spending the most time with in everything that you're doing, and if you think that there's a separation, you very quickly will find out that that's not the case, right? And so the quicker you're able to integrate the people you love into the decision making process and into your day to day, the better off you're going to be. And for me, I fortunately learned that the more vulnerable I was becoming, the stronger support I had. And so it gave me more confidence to go back out and make tougher decisions. And to, a great example is anytime I would walk into the house with a new job opportunity and saying, my job opportunities weren't like, oh, hey, I got promoted.
Right.
And I'm moving offices from this corner to this corner. It's like, no, we're moving from, we're moving to Hawaii, we're moving to Hong Kong. So those decisions are, they're not one person decisions, right? And in fact, right now we're living in Ibiza, and we're living in Ibiza because my wife and my kids decided they want to live in Ibiza, right? So it's their time to make that choice, right? And they've sacrificed and moved their entire career for me, and now it's my turn to do that for them while I have the flexibility to do so. So yeah, it's a partnership.
But the CEO gave you permission to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it was a joint decision, honestly. It was, it's not, it was like, okay, are we open? Are we ready to start this new venture together? Right. And are we start and we both recognize that the power, the joint power that we have is magnifies everything, right? And so if we come in to a venture, we're doing it together. And so it's not an entrepreneur, we're a business, and we're in it together for sure.
I love
Well, and that takes trust and passion and everything else, right? I mean, clearly y'all got that rapport.
And a
Yeah, and a
lot
lot
of
of
good work
mistakes.
on communicating. I mean, you make
Yeah,
it sound
a lot of
easy.
mistakes, a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes, a lot of, personal journey too, a lot of when you're finally able to surpass some of the traumas that you've had, and that you recognize that those exist, and that you're okay in speaking about them openly and using them as a platform to learn. I think all of that, right? It comes with maturing and making a lot of mistakes, like I said,
Especially being Hispanic, right? The machismo of
Totally.
admitting that you don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so humility is such a big part in all this, right? And as it ties back to operations, right? Whether it be co-working or hospitality or running a household, it's about being humble and knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. And, it's something that as we all get older, we're better at going, hey, this is not my skill set. Let me bring in the right person rather than trying to do it myself. And I think that's the biggest part that I see as I interact with operators across our industry or any industry, right? Is going, who are you and what are you, right? So many people think, oh, we've got the best product. I'm like, well, have you been down the street and looked at the other operations? Well, no, we've never been in there. I'm like, so how do you know who you're competing against? How can you tell someone we're better than they are, but you've never been in there, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what the space looks like. You're not able to really have those interactions and connections, right? And so it's just interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think it's also tied to the level of presence, and I think that we talked a little bit about this earlier, that unfortunately nowadays people are so distracted, and so I think it's taking people longer or a harder fall to recognize that, they don't know everything, and that, that they are not perfect, and that it's okay. And that it's okay not to be perfect. In fact, it's celebrated now, and that the only way to gain trust with people is if you do demonstrate vulnerability and humility. But we're in many ways going backwards. We're going the wrong direction because of the amount of distraction and the amount of limits that society is putting on us. Through technology in particular, and the lack of tools that we're giving people in order to properly manage technology, and the emotional distortion that's bringing, and then the fact that we can't regulate, it's just a big problem, unfortunately. And so that's where I think the human-centered business is a way out, and is a way, and hospitality is that, like I said, it's that love language that can help you really stay connected, there's a major longing for belonging in humans right now, and they don't know how to achieve it. And that's why people many times will choose to go into these businesses, right? Right. Why would I choose to go into a co-working space instead of working from home 5 days a week? Is because I want to see another human
Yeah,
being.
it has
I want
to
to
be
interact
that.
with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so that's that longing for belonging is a beautiful tool that, or a beautiful necessity that we can tap into in order to make a successful space.
Well, I mean, we can make such an impact as operators, as people within the industry, right? On people's lives, on people's businesses, on our communities, and so I think that's the bigger part is we've talked about it. What's your why, right? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
Are you doing it for the right reasons, right? And I think, that's a big conversation that David and I had, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And
Yeah.
as he was kind of stepping out of his role in the hospitality world that he was working in at the level he was working in. And so, at the end of the day, he wanted to continue to drive impact. He's like, how can I help the co-working industry? How can I help the hospitality industry? How can I do bigger things? And we had lunch right before this, and I'd love for him to talk about that kind of briefly as to what he's working on now. But it's all about stepping out and going, how can I impact the greater community, right, in other ways? And so you're kind of launching a impact led business fund that's doing all kinds of cool stuff outside of just hotels. You want to talk about that briefly and why you're doing it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So once I recognized that hospitality was a love language, right? This was a realization I really crystallized about a year ago. And it started when I started speaking in conferences and I started really going down this path of conscious hospitality and how the only way to really improve our communities is by raising the level of consciousness, right? And it's no longer about giving people more process and more rules. It's the opposite, right? Is how can we actually get people to care so that we can get rid of rules and so that people can do it because they actually are driven by whatever that mission and that intention is. And so once I realized that I could use this communication language or this tool in a much broader scale and that there's a need for it is when the idea of, wow, I can really make a much bigger impact and I can make a bigger impact on communities and I can make a bigger impact on human beings with this idea of longing for belonging. And I essentially recognized that I'd been building communities for years, for 20 years, right? Every hotel is a community because people come back, and you welcome them back. And so we've like Gio mentioned, my business partner and I, who came from the oil and gas business, a very successful oil and gas business, financial entrepreneur, sold this company, was going through a bit of a spiritual journey, decided that what he didn't want to get back into the oil and gas business after he sold his company, even though he had received an incredible offer to go and run a major company. And, he, at first, of course, he was like, yes, title, money, all of it, fame, whatever. And very quickly he felt, yeah, but this is not feeding my soul. This is making me shallow inside. And when he reached out to me, I was going through the same thing. I was like, yeah, I mean, I could go and take another big job with a big company with a big name and a big title. But what I realized is that those things mean nothing if you're not making an impact in people's lives. And so we've decided to start essentially an impact investment fund where we use it as a vehicle to really partner with great companies that are doing beautiful things to improve humanity and to improve the communities they operate in. There's definitely a hospitality element to that where we're going to have these beautiful community spaces where people can come together and really take advantage of the entire ecosystem. It's a very circular ecosystem. So from regenerative farming to, of course, hotel stay or community type staying, to recreating blue zones and really essentially looking at what does the retirement home of the future look like so that like-minded communities can come together and really, and, bringing great companies that have a brighter future in their minds along the way, so educational opportunities, sustainable energy, nutrition, fitness, holistic health. These are the pillars that we're looking at the fund through. And it's been amazing because it's really brought me in front of people that have some great ideas and what they need is just the momentum and they need somebody that can take that and believe in them and bring it to life. So very exciting future ahead.
And tell me about the book.
Yeah, so the book is called The Future of Teamwork. So the whole idea behind the book is that, again, going back to the changes that we're seeing in society, and how unfortunately business has not evolved at the pace that we needed to evolve in organizations, because the generations that are coming into the workforce are evolved generations. We, the people that are in Gen X and some millennials are don't see it that way, unfortunately. And that's the big problem. That was my realization, was like, wow, all we do is we complain about them.
Yeah.
We say they're lazy. We say they're entitled. We say they don't care. There's no loyalty. All that, but we created them, right? This Gen Z is the generation that Gen X created, right? It's literally called a generation because they generated that group of people, and it's based on the decisions they made as parents and the decisions that baby boomers made as grandparents,
Yeah.
right? So, not to anybody's fault. There's no judgment, because a lot of the repercussions of what happened to us in our life, they're not intended, right? It's not like we intended to make people a specific way, but it happened, right? And so the fact that technology got introduced to this generation as digital natives through a group of people that had no idea what they were doing with technology and how to take care of technology or how to use it, right? Plus the fact that we were getting busier and busier, and so we were spending a lot less time and presence with our kids, led to this crazy change in the way that we see the relationship with authority, the relationship with parents, the idea of attachment, right? The idea of, before we had attachment based on knowledge, right? So you would see the figure of an authoritative figure, a teacher, a pastor, a coach, a parent. All of that, all of these people had attachment to the younger people through knowledge. They were the ones that knew how to do things, right? I don't know how to do things. Let me go ask my dad. I don't know how to do something. Let me go ask my coach or the pastor. Now it's not based on
Let me
knowledge
ask
at all.
YouTube.
Exactly.
I have a
Exactly. Right.
12-year-old also.
Exactly. Right. And so,
She thinks she knows way more than I do. I'm like,
well,
yeah,
she does. She does.
I know, I'm
She,
sure.
she has more knowledge.
Yeah.
She has more knowledge or access to knowledge, right? And wisdom is applied knowledge, right? It's knowledge with experience. And so we used to then look up at the grandparents, be like, they were the source of wisdom. And so
Yeah.
when we really didn't know how to do something, or we didn't believe what our parents were telling us, we would go to the source of wisdom and be like, hey, is my dad right? Or is my mom really saying the
Mhm.
truth? Like, can you validate this for me? Now you don't need that anymore. And so the idea of wisdom is gone, right? And wisdom, grandparents, think of the grandparent figure. Now they're just the fun, nice person that you
Mhm.
need to take care of because
Yeah.
they're at the last phase of their life, and they become like a child again. It's a very different attachment. And so the same thing happens at work, right? So the boss, the person that thinks they're the boss because they have the corner office in the title,
Mhm.
has no attachment to their teams because
So
they're
interesting. I
they
can't
don't
wait to
need
read
to.
this book. Yeah, this is
Yeah. So
hard.
so yeah,
Yeah.
and so when I tell people, hey, if you think that you're the boss, you're wrong. Those people are your boss now. And so your job is, how do you create attachment with these people if you want to really be the boss, right? And so that attachment has to be created
Yeah.
through
That's
connection,
right.
through
There's no
bonding.
inherent, there's
It's
no,
the
right,
human.
your org
It's the
chart. Like
human.
they don't buy that. That's not a framework for them. Really.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It has
Right. So
meaning. Yeah.
they
Mhm.
see hierarchy, and they don't see hierarchy as a way of it gives you power, but it's fake power, right? And so
Right.
that's why the moment you turn around, they're like, I'm going to do it my own way anyway, because
Yeah.
it's 10 times faster than what this old man is telling me, or this person that has no clue, right? So it's really interesting. So that level of attachment is really critical, and it works at home as well, right? You can be the parent that thinks you know everything but has no idea what your child's going through, or you can be the parent that doesn't care about how things get done. All they care about is the well-being of the child and supporting them and being next to them. And the one thing that technology cannot give is this human intuition and understanding. Like, wow, Jamie's having a really tough day today. Why don't I go and relieve Jamie from that responsibility she has, so she can go and take a minute to regulate and actually figure out what she needs to figure out, and then tomorrow she'll come back and be the better version of herself. Technology can't do that for us yet, right? And so that's where attachment grows, and that's where parents that are present, that are actually present, aware of what's happening with their children, are the ones that are having these really great relationships with them, right? And so when they become 15, 16, 17, rather than completely, disregarding their parents or not they are more communicative, and they say, Mom, I'm having this problem, or this happened to me, this is going on, because they've created and maintained a level of attachment. So that's essentially where the book is headed.
Wait, and this is just from your, this is like a little off the hospitality theme. It's really interesting, but
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is just from like your work life and how you're like your lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what I've
Wow.
learned through the different cultures and through the different, mistakes, the
Mm,
positives, the
yeah.
negatives from being a parent. I think I
Like
learned
this is universal.
it's
All the
universal.
things yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the goal or the mission, I would say, or the vision is to really help the workforce evolve, right? And help the human
Yeah.
resources component of an organization reclaim attachment and reclaim power over true power, not so that you can move things together as an organization, right? And so that, and again, if you flip the model and you're like, okay, it's no longer about this hierarchy, it's about the human beings. It goes back to this idea we were talking about. It's like now, if I'm like, when I do executive search or executive placement for a company, I don't go to the company and say, okay, what is the role that you need to fill? I say, these are the 5 people that I have that are amazing, that could fit your company culturally because they have similar values. This is what they're good at. Why don't we create a role that makes sense for this type of person? Or why don't we put a list of responsibilities together that would actually fulfill this human being, right? And this human being will remain loyal to you because you're giving them responsibilities
Yeah.
that actually make them thrive. And let's build a compensation structure that is progressive so that this person can have a lifeline of 5 years with your company and isn't jumping to the next role just
Just to
because
get
they need to
more.
sustain their
Yeah.
family. Exactly. Exactly.
You got Jamie's wheels turning on this
I
one.
know. I'm so interested in all of this. It's fascinating. Okay, Gio, what you got?
Your final question.
You want me to ask my final question?
Yeah.
My usual one?
No, you've got better ones. You've gotten the last couple. You've gotten a couple really good ones. Go deep.
No pressure, Jamie.
I know. I don't remember what my last one was. You might have to
What
ask it.
is? I have to ask it.
Yep.
What are you most passionate? I mean, obviously your family, but what are you most passionate? I mean, you obviously bring this energy when you talk about these things. I mean, if you could basically give one piece of advice on impact, on community, on hospitality, on all those things, what would that be from your heart?
It would be to learn to live present, to elevate consciousness individually, collectively. I was a very distracted millennial, like most millennials, very distracted. I was on my phone all the time, definitely addicted to my phone, addicted to alcohol, used it as a numbing substance. I remember having a conversation with my wife where I said, I never cheated on you with a woman, but I definitely cheated on you with alcohol. I had a romantic relationship with alcohol. I used it as an excuse. I used it as a way out. I used it when I wanted to feel good. I used it when I felt bad. So I definitely had a tumultuous relationship and history in my family. I, had I had the fortune that I had a partner that, was able to be very open and straightforward with me to help me get out of that and then started on my journey. But I think you don't need to go to hit rock bottom to recognize that the only way out and the only way to actually enjoy life and live a fulfilling life is to be present. And that you have to be super disciplined in order to create those spaces to be present. So, starting a meditation practice, starting a journaling practice, really honoring every time you put something into your body, whether it's food, water, beverage, just it's okay to sometimes do things that perhaps aren't necessarily great for your body as long as you're doing it with a lot of intention, right? So, sometimes I'll have a beer, for example, but when I have that beer, it's with absolute intention, knowing that that's my one treat and that I'm going to absolutely savor it. And it's completely reclaimed my relationship through of alcohol, right? So I don't have to like not drink at all, because now I know that that's my moment, right? And same thing with a coffee in the morning, whatever it is. And then, yeah, it's also if you lead by example in that way and walking a present life, people around you do the same, and it gravitates. And the more you do that, the more collective the consciousness level rises, the more happy we are as a society, right? And the less we need distraction and this addiction to dopamine. So I would say just learn to live present as long as possible, and take control, take command over that voice in your head, because it's not the driver in the car. It should be sitting in the back seat waiting for your awareness to be the driver, and that's it. So that's what I would say.
We got big shoes to fill. We've had a couple big ones, Jamie.
Seriously.
Willie a few weeks ago, this one, Kurt.
Yeah.
So
Nice job, Gio. Thank you, David, for taking the time to do this on your
course.
like
Thank you,
whirlwind
guys.
trip on your way back home after this, you
I'm
said.
on my way. Yeah, right after this, I'm headed to the airport,
Okay.
and happy to go see my family and hug my kids and give my wife a big kiss. She deserves it. So
Okay. Well, keep us posted. I
Will
want to know when
do.
the book's
Will do.
done. When is the book due out?
So Q1 25, so just a
Okay.
few months out. So yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited about it.
Yeah,
Very
we'll
much
have to have
looking
you
forward
back
to it.
on to talk about the book.
Sounds great.
That'll be our excuse.
Sounds great. Any excuse to hang out with you guys is
Awesome.
welcome.